Welcome, everyone, to the Geek Guy Podcast. As always, if you want to follow the Geek Guy Podcast, hit us up on Twitter at The Slam Sessions. As you know, the Geek Guy Podcast is a part of the Slam Sessions Network. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a different show. It's going to be a little bit of a fun show because I actually have a special guest in studio with me this week. Right next to me is Mike Curley. Say hello, Mike.
Hey, guys. Hey, Albert.
What's going on? I'm glad to have you on here.
I'm glad to be on here. I've been listening to a couple of your shows, and I want a piece of this. I think it's good. I think you're doing a good job.
Well, I appreciate that, and look, anytime anybody listens, it makes me feel good inside. So,
I'm all about making you feel good inside, Albert.
Well, that's what I like to hear. Give you a little bit of a preview of what we're going to go into this week. Of course, some major news. We got the release date for the solo Han Solo film. That is going to really be fun to talk about.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, and then we're going to go into something that's a little bit interesting, a little bit out of the wheelhouse of this show, which makes it a lot more fun. We're going to talk about some tabletop games because I'm sitting next to a guy who's quite the tabletop game master.
I don't know about master, but I've been around the block.
Well, that's good. Look, you're better versed than I am. I'm sure that the crap I'm going to mention is going to be like, yeah, this is one of those regular mainstream crappy games. You get all high and mighty on me?
Oh, maybe a little.
Don't blame you.
You need someone to take you down a peg once in a while.
I've been told that, and I still don't believe it. So let's get into. We'll start with Star Wars. So we got our very first Han Solo film. They're starting off with all of our Solo films in the series. First of all, what's your reaction to them doing a Han Solo film?
I think if you're going to do prequels to anybody from the original series, Han Solo is the natural choice. Because in the original movie, he's older than Luke. He's clearly been around the block a few times, been around the galaxy. He's got rumors about him. He's got a ship that looks like crap but runs like hell. And I think there's a lot of room to have, okay, this is one run he went on, okay? This is another unrelated. It's going to kind of be like the Indiana Jones movies where, fittingly enough, Harrison Ford, where each movie is kind of disconnected but connected on the theme and the characters.
I completely agree. I think that for a really long time, before they did Force Awakens, I was actually hoping they actually did what I'd like to call an episode 0, which would have been a complete prequel to the entire series. Because I'm always about seeing the background of every character. And I always wanted to see a little bit more about the background of Yoda, figure out the background of Count Dooku and how he kind of turned on Yoda and became became an apprentice for Emperor Palpatine. And then, seeing Qui-Gon Jinn's backstory, seeing if he was always that headstrong. So I love the idea of a prequel. But I know that if you told me, pick a character, any character you want to know the most about, the immediate reaction to me is always Han Solo. He's the coolest character ever.
Yeah, I kind of want to see, there's always been, what is Chewbacca doing there? You do see Chewbacca in the prequel, so how did he go from that to being co-pilot to this scruffy-looking guy? I kind of have to disagree with you on the general sense that you want to see prequels of everybody. I honestly think that was a weakness of the old continuity before Disney bought it. I think a lot of the cryptic references are better as cryptic references. Like my what I always go to, that scene in the cantina where Luke and Han meet, there is a book or story about every single one of those guys, and there's the whole 3 different versions of how the Kessel Run, how he did the 12 parsecs, because a parsec is a unit of distance. So if you watch the movie, you read even in the script, Han Solo is BSing there. And Alec Guinness is clearly reacting as that. And I liked it better when Han Solo is really just a blowhard. He's bluffing to impress Luke instead of, oh, no, this has to be true. He has to have done this and this and this. I think it's a better world building to leave the cryptic references cryptic.
I actually didn't think of that. That's actually a really good point. The thing is that I just like getting the background, and I kind of hope that they kind of mention something like that, and maybe he doesn't make the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs. Maybe it's it's a little bit longer.
12 and a half.
Yeah, maybe it's like 15 or 16, and he comes up, he's like, no, it was 12.
No, it's got to be 14 because that's what Ray says in the movie.
And then he does stall a little bit and go, no, it was 12. So, but no, I do agree with you there. I do. But I do think that actually, I was looking at the cast. And I know some, not all, and I'm kind of okay with a lot of people's work. we had a little bit of a conversation right before we got on here about the idea that Star Wars does best with a lot of unknown actors. So Alden Ehrenreich is going to be playing Han Solo.
And I've never heard of him.
And neither of us has seen anything he's been in. So, I mean, for me, that lends a good... That lends something to me that's really good because, you know, I went into Force Awakens looking at, you know, Daisy Ridley and looking at... oh, God, it's really big.
John Boyega.
John Boyega. I was also thinking of the guy who played Poe Dameron, whose name for right now is just completely escaping me, which... Oscar Isaac.
Him.
I haven't seen them in anything before that either. So here I am going into this brand new, you know, story with brand new characters, and I hope that it doesn't take us out of it to see somebody like Emilia Clarke, Woody Harrelson, and Donald Glover all being cast in the in different roles in the Han Solo film, and you know maybe take us out a little bit.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Having the new guy, an unknown, play Han Solo lets him really own the role and lets you see the character more than the actor. Now, Star Wars, yeah, we were talking about like Carrie Fisher, Mark Hamill. They were virtual unknowns when Star Wars first came out. But it did have veterans like Alec Guinness, Peter Cushing, and Harrison Ford. He'd been in a couple movies. So I think it probably will work best to have that mix of established actors to kind of give, I'm not going to say legitimacy because Star Wars is already kind of, you go to Star Wars to get legitimate.
Right.
But kind of to ground it in, okay, we've got this bedrock of actors who are proven, we're going to be good, so that the new guy can kind of stretch his wings a little bit and figure out where he's going with it and kind of carry the movie the way Daisy Ridley and John Boyega did.
I agree. I do like the fact that, you know, we kind of talked a little bit. We kind of feel like Emilia Clarke is probably going to play some semblance of a love interest for Han
some
Solo.
Temporary love interest who may or may not make it to the end of the movie. Or maybe it'll be like an Irene Adler thing where she swipes something that Han's been after the whole time and jets off.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it could be something fun like that. What I do like is that Woody Harrelson playing Harrison Ford's mentor. You know, we made the joke earlier that no mentor makes it to the end of a movie, so we kind of know his fate already.
Yeah, Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and spoiler alert if you haven't seen The Force Awakens, if you haven't, then why are you listening to the Geek Guy podcast?
Fair enough.
Han Solo doesn't make it through that one, like you said. Saw Gerrera in Rogue One.
Rogue One, yeah.
So yeah, although I will say, I kind of hope I'm going by the example of Zombieland, which I was saying that's the one problem with having the established actors. I'm going to be seeing Tallahassee no matter what he's like, and I kind of hope that's the case. I mean, if Michael Rooker can be Blue Space Merle in Guardians of the Galaxy, I will buy a Tallahassee teaching Han Solo everything he knows. And
one makes sense.
It actually does.
It does.
And one thing from Zombieland that I would really hope is it was a big subversion, you know, where Tallahassee has the big final stand against all the zombies. Any other serious zombie movies, he'd be overrun and killed. Right. Zombieland, he's sitting on top of the pile with 2 empty guns at the end. So I would love to see that kind of thing in Star Wars, where he goes to be like the fifth mentor running that does a heroic sacrifice, but no, he shows up at the end. He's totally fine.
And then we just, I mean, if this is going to lead to more films, which I mean, I originally heard this might be another trilogy they might do. It may be a standalone. I don't think they've made the decision yet. I guess it's kind of, I'm sure they made the decision now, but haven't released it. So, I mean, it may leave him an opening in the sequel for him, or, if that's the case. So, I mean, look, anything you can get Woody Harrelson into is going to be fun.
Yeah, he is a fun actor. I feel like he would have a lot of fun. And I kind of hope, after Rogue One was very good, but it was very dark.
Yes, it was.
I feel like this is going to be just a much more fun movie. And I think Donald Glover, edit that out. Young Lando Calrissian, I think he's going to have a lot of fun with the role. And I would really like to see, maybe it'll be like a kind of a buddy cop thing or buddy smuggler thing, where, this is how he steals the Falcon. Although I hope they don't get everything in it.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I do want to leave some stuff up to interpretation.
That was a major problem I had with X-Men First Class, where it goes through the entirety of Professor X and Magneto's backstory, where, in the original movies, Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart, they sell it as if these guys had been friends for years, decades.
Yeah.
And then they had a final falling out. So in First Class, they known each other for a month, 2 months.
It's for what it seems like. I mean, maybe it was longer. That training montage could have lasted a year but you know,
still,
Yeah.
I feel like that would have served better to maybe end that movie with them still friends, just establishing the X-Men, and then over the course of the next 3 movies, you have the falling out.
Right. I mean, maybe by Apocalypse is when their opposite viewpoints would have finally clashed to the point where Magneto would have broke off and had his own crew.
Right, yeah, that would have. I feel like that would have been better, but I still liked Apocalypse and Days of Future Past, and I kind of like how they did like the whole time travel, fixing everything.
Yes, I thought that was really cool.
So I think it worked out eventually. I just hope that in Star Wars they don't try to cram the Kessel Run, him stealing the Falcon, and like everything into one movie. Because where does that leave you for the next movie?
I agree. In talking about Lando Calrissian and talking about Donald Glover being casted as Lando Calrissian, there was a lot of rumors going around in the beginning of who could play Lando, because I mean, let's face it, Billy D. Williams is iconic. His portrayal of that character, that ness that he has with that character is just, I mean, I felt like it couldn't be duplicated. And then I heard it was like, oh, by the way, they're casting Donald Glover. I went, well, crap, I don't know if you could have found somebody who was going to be better than that.
Yeah, I think he's got a lot of range, a lot of talent, and I hope he's talking to Billy D. I hope he's getting some tips.
I hope so too. I really do.
I hope he's just watching Empire Strikes Back, so he has that saunter, that very, very, very chill, very charming effort, and I hope he tries to steal Han's girl again in this movie.
Well, my hope, in all honesty, is that Han, I'm going to call him Han because that's who he is, Harrison Ford and Billy D. Williams are on set watching some of this stuff. I mean, I hope so. Because, I mean, if you have the OG actors sitting on the sides going, cut, and, hey, kid, come here. Look, I understand what you're trying to do, but Han Solo wouldn't have done that. He would do this.
Han would have shot first, kid. I don't care which version of the movie you
saw. I don't care what the script says. Han shot first. And Billy D. pulling him aside like, oh, man, you got to be sexier than that. Come on.
All right, Don, get out of here. I'm doing this now.
Makeup team, it's CGI'd, everybody's face is on everybody else's body. Let's do it now. Let's do it.
They brought Peter Cushing back from the dead. They can make it work.
Exactly. So, I mean, look, I think, to put to put a bow on the end of this, I think you can tell we're both excited for it,
Yeah.
And it's another Star Wars entity. It's another film that we get in this universe that isn't, that doesn't have like the gravitas of being a part of a trilogy. Well, at least a sequential trilogy, and it's almost like a side mission in a video game, and that's what I kind of like about that's actually what I liked about the most about Rogue One, is that Rogue One was kind of like the idea of a side mission in a video game.
Yeah. I am probably going to be in the minority of saying I kind of like Star Wars without the Jedi, because a Jedi walks on the scene and like that's it. No one's beating him in a fight. No one is, it's about them. It's about the Skywalkers. It's about Rey, whatever her last name happens to be. It's about
Skywalker.
Yeah, it's about whoever's holding the lightsaber. So if you have a movie, I liked about Rogue One is it is kind of a very boots on the ground. It's like, here's how everyone else in the world gets along.
Yeah. It's kind of like I actually compared that to the idea of the Purge films, where the first Purge film we got the essence of everybody's inside the house and what happens inside the house, and the second Purge film was what happens outside. And I kind of thought that was a good dynamic that we saw, it's like, the streets and, and on the inside. And then with Rogue One was, okay, you've seen the Jedi, now here's everyone else.
Yeah, you've seen the ideal of what the Republic and the Rebellion are supposed to be. Here's the guys doing all the dirty work. Here's the guy stabbing somebody in the back in an alleyway to get those plans.
Yeah.
Here's, even the Rebellions are built on hope, as she says in the movie, but they're also kind of built on a lot of backstabbing and clandestine murder.
Yeah, shooting your injured best friend in an alleyway so you can escape. I mean, hey,
sometimes you got to do that.
You got to do what you got to do. Well, I mean, look, we're really excited. Han Solo getting his own film. We get to see the backstory of Han Solo, and it's going to be really fun. But let's kind of turn our attentions now to the main course of the podcast.
Oh, I'm the main course. I like that.
Oh, you are.
You're just buttering me up now.
Listen, you got to put some butter on those rolls there in the main course, don't you?
This is true. This is very true.
So, we're going to talk a little bit about tabletop games. And what's cool is that I feel like I'm here with an expert, so I get to learn some stuff, and I feel like I'm also going to, start talking about some stuff, and he's going to be like, you're playing the wrong games here, dude.
Well, I will not. Okay, I'm not going to say there aren't any wrong games, because I have played some stinkers. ones that are either poorly designed, usually ones that are some licensed game.
Okay.
They're put to cash in. There was a Star Wars card game that is like, of course, the Jedi do everything right.
Sounds about right.
If you don't have a Jedi in the party, you're screwed. But my background in board games, about 2 or 3 years ago, actually I want to say 3 or 4 years ago maybe, me and a friend, we started a group we called Game at Joe's because we're very creative. It was at Joe's house.
Can I ask how long it took for you to figure out that title?
Longer than it should have. I'm terrible with names, but anyway, so we started playing these games because we all had a couple board games, but really like nobody regularly to play with them. We were all mostly video gamers. In fact, I know my friend Joe from a video game meetup that happened once a week.
Oh, that's actually pretty cool. What were you guys playing, just out of curiosity?
Oh, no. There's a game store in Clifton, Digital Press, that once a month they have like a swap meet. It's a game store that has all kinds of vintage games, like everything from Atari to modern. So he will have like themed things. So Halloween, it's always horror games.
Okay.
Or depending on what's coming out. Like I think when Pokemon Go got released, it was all Pokemon games. And, he had the tournament that day was Pokemon Stadium stuff.
Oh, cool.
So I met Joe there, and we started talking about just board games. And we set it up with some of his friends, who are now some of my friends, and we've been doing it weekly for a couple years. In fact, they're actually doing it right now.
So I made you miss your board game night to come talk about board games with me.
Yeah, actually. So
I feel like a jerk.
Nah, don't worry about it. It's not the first one I missed, not the last I missed, I'm sure. So there's kind of different categories to board games. I'm sure we all played like Candyland, Chutes and Ladders, where there is a board, you roll the dice, you go a certain amount, and first one to the end wins, or first one a certain amount of points wins. But what we've been playing, what I've gotten used to playing, is more kind of abstract games where, going around the board might be a mechanism, but it's not the point. And one thing I learned doing, some prep work for today's show is there is a distinct difference between American board games and European-style board games.
Really?
Where American board games are competitive. There are things like Monopoly, where, it's
tearing families apart since...
Oh, yeah. We played Monopoly once, and the only reason it didn't end in violence is because they decided to settle it in Smash Brothers instead.
That is a fair way to settle... oh, man, that is the best way to settle anything, actually.
It really is. So American board games are like Risk, like that, where it's competitive, you're up against each other, and there's a high element of luck. European board games, on the other hand, are more, not necessarily collaborative, but they have less militaristic themes, more economic themes, don't have player elimination for the most part, and they downplay the luck aspect. It might still be there, but it's not, it's not the entire thing. There's a lot of trading, there's commerce. Probably the best example is Settlers of Catan.
Okay.
Have you ever played that?
No, I have not.
It's kind of like Risk in that there's a map that you're trying to settle. But unlike Risk, there's no direct conflict between players. Once you grab a territory, you own it. You never get rid of it.
Oh, okay.
You win the game by amassing victory points, and you get victory points for making settlements, having the longest road, and upgrading those settlements. And each settlement, each upgrade, each road takes a certain amount of resources.
Oh, that's really cool.
And each hexagon creates resources and has a number on it. So the one element of luck is everybody's turn, they roll the dice. They roll 2 dice, and if they say, roll an 8, whoever is on a spot that has an 8, they get one of that resource. Okay. So some people are going to end up, there's 4 resources. There's clay, lumber, wool, and wheat. Oh, 5, and stone.
Okay.
And although we don't call them that. We call 2 of them wood and sheep so that we can tell each other we're trading. Yeah, I got wood, who's got sheep? Who's got wood for sheep?
You gotta make it a little dirty sometimes. Right?
Yeah, it's part of the fun. So it's a commerce game where there's no set rules for what you can trade. So if I have like everything for a city except for like the 1 wool, I can say, okay, I'm sitting on a load of clay. You need 3 clay? Here's 3 clay. I'll get that. I'll get the point. And again, there's no way to eliminate. It's basically you can crowd people in by how you build, and it is competitive. And there is the bandit, which you can, if you roll a 7, you get to move the bandit around and steal from a character.
Oh, cool.
But aside from that, it's, you can't lose territory. You can't really attack anybody. And there's a few games that we've played like that, and we like the competitive stuff too, but there is a nice different aspect to that.
Yeah, I do kind of have to agree with you. There's actually a game that I play with my wife and actually one of our friends who Lauren, and a couple of other people. It's a game called oh my God, it was right on the tip of my tongue, and now there's two separate versions of it. Originally it's called Scribblish, and then there's another version of it that's called Telestrations After Dark.
Okay.
And the idea of it is that you draw a picture. It's basically like a physical game of telephone.
Okay.
So you get a word. So let's say like your word is baseball. So you draw, or a baseball game. So you write baseball game, then you draw a baseball game. Then the next person, you pass it to your left, and the next person has to guess what you drew. And so they'll guess, and then whatever they write. So maybe it didn't look like, to them, it looked like a football game. So the next person draws like a football, but to that, it looked like the main character of Hey Arnold. So now that person was like, oh, it's Hey Arnold. And it goes on, and it gets really funny after a while. And the good thing about that game is that it's fun. It's funny with the reveal of where everything started, getting to the end. But there's no winner. You can vote on a winner, but we never do because it's the fun of the process. And there not being a winner makes it even more fun because there's no competition. It's just we try to be as outrageous and outlandish as we possibly can, which makes it a lot more fun.
Yeah, we play a few games like that. We play Cards Against Humanity as another
Such
one like that.
Such a great game.
I think everybody's probably played that, so we probably don't need to go into that.
I do have to say that my favorite part about that game is playing with my 82-year-old grandmother.
Oh God, that's always the best.
And her having a shout out Big Black Dildo, which is really fun.
I am ashamed and proud to say I once won a game that involved a friend's old Eastern European mother, and the card I play was a bigger, blacker dick.
That might have been it, actually.
The card that she had was it was the black card. The game of charades came to a halt when Mom had to act out blank. So that was fate on my side, and it was just a terrible, terrible thing. But another game that is kind of along those lines, although it's called I, Dark Overlord.
Okay.
And it is a game of backstabbing and throwing people under the bus.
That sounds like fun.
Where the setup of the game is one person is the overlord, rigor mortis, and everyone else is his incompetent minions. And he is chastising everyone else for some mission they botched.
Okay.
And all the cards, there's two types of cards. There's hint cards, which all have like fantasy stuff on them, or other aspects of the setting.
Like, give me an example.
The first one that comes to mind, of course, is the succubi, but also things like magic bullets or a flying ship or the other dark overlord, where. So what you have to do is you say, like I might say, Albert, my minion, you were supposed to get the golden fleece for me. What happened? And you would say, I was going for the golden fleece master, but the smart bullets turned out to be dumb because Lauren was talking to the other dark overlord. So then Lauren has to explain what's going on. And it becomes this long, winding, ridiculous story until eventually the Dark Overlord picks somebody to blame, gives them a withering look, and they like smote. and it's always hilarious because we come up with these stories, and you have to start looking around the table, and eventually someone trips up and is like, "That's it, you're done."
That's great. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, and that one, there's no winner. There's just one loser. Whoever gets smote.
That's great. I actually like that.
Yeah,
games would be better served if there was only one loser. You can really, start to see who your friends are.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's a fun game. We always have fun with it, and somehow I always get stuck with the succubi and the sexy elf and the cat girl. I don't know. Must be something about me.
Maybe, but you would make a sexy elf.
Indubitably, yes, indubitably. Yeah, I have been finding, as I've been getting more and more into board games, that there is like a huge market, growing market. Like if you look on Kickstarter, there's dozens of the things, even for established ones. One of my favorite games, Sentinels of the Multiverse, it's a superhero cooperative card game.
Oh, that sounds cool.
Where the setup is between 3 to 5 players, each pick a superhero. And it's not DC or Marvel. They're all original characters that were made by the game's creators.
Oh, I like that.
A lot of them are kind of similar to established superheroes. like there's one guy, Legacy, who is basically a mixture of Captain America and Superman, where he has a lot of Superman's powers, but he's like tied to American history.
Okay.
There's another character who's called the Wraith, who is basically Batman as a girl.
Okay, that's cool.
So
I mean, I think, look, we talk, obviously we talk a lot about superheroes on this show. I think there's been so many heroes created that it's hard to create new ones.
Yeah, but they kind of mix and match, and they throw in a lot of original stuff too. But what I was saying was, so it's a cooperative game. Each person plays a hero. There is an automatic villain deck and an automatic environment deck. So you might be fighting killer robot army in, the equivalent of Gotham City, or in another dimension, or in another planet, or on a volcanic island that has dinosaurs on it.
Oh, no, that sounds like fun.
And it's kind of like a wild card effect. And that game's been out for a couple years, and they've been doing expansions. So the first expansion was it was called the Rook City expansion. Rook City is kind of Sin City, Gotham, where you got new villains like a criminal organization, a mutated rat man who lives in the sewers.
Splinter?
A little less nice than Splinter. And you got two kind of grim and gritty heroes. One of those basically who's a gun-toting vigilante with one eye. Another one was a...
Nick Fury?
No, think more Punisher.
Okay.
And the other one is a blind mechanic martial artist who, in the game's backstory, was a blaxploitation superhero called Black Fist.
Oh my God, that's cool.
Yeah, the game has a lot of lore, and the creators actually have their own podcast where they're going by character, going into the publication history of like,
that's awesome.
Back in the 60s, the Wraith fought a lot of communists, and she was in college. So anyway, they were building up to their final expansion. Final expansion, which is like a big Galactus-style Crisis on Infinite Earths thing where like everything is coming to a close. And they opened the Kickstarter with a goal of 100,000. Actually, 100,000, I think, was to get all of their stretch goals.
Okay.
They got that in about an hour.
Holy crap, that's amazing.
Yeah, by the end of it, the end of the first day, the first update was like, oh, guys, we got to come up with some other stretch goals because this is clearly not going to stop. They ended up with like something like 1.5 million.
Wow.
So that's an established game that, I already have. That's the one I was talking about before, has come in with the carrying case. So,
the one that weighed a ton?
Yeah. I have my games in the studio, and they weigh about 40 pounds.
They're pretty heavy. I picked them up.
Yeah. So there's a lot of those kinds of games on Kickstarter where someone has some idea and, puts it out and comes up with the mechanics. And 2016 was one of the biggest years for that kind of thing. And I belong to another gaming group. There was a guy who was demoing his own game. He had like markered out a board in pieces. And, he's getting feedback for it. I've given feedback on a couple games. And it really is kind of on the rise. And I kind of find that interesting in the respect that, video games are the big thing. Video games, the virtual reality, online connectivity, and all of that are also big things. So the question becomes kind of, what is drawing people to board games? What's drawing people to lug a big box of cards around, spread them out, and play for like an hour in person?
Which, I mean, you bring up a really interesting point because it's actually one of the things I was going to ask you about. You answered one of the questions that I didn't even have to ask you.
That's because I'm that good, man.
Seriously, quite honestly, we talked about 14 seconds before this podcast about what we were going to do, so this is really good preparation on our part. I would have thought that the board game industry would have actually been on the decline right now because of the fact that everybody at least most of the people who I know are sitting with a headset on in front of an Xbox, talking to their friends, and they don't have to be there in person, which is kind of a cool idea because, look, we all have friends who moved away or friends who we don't, maybe don't talk to as much, and that's our way of keeping in touch with them is, over an Xbox. Yep. And I always wanted to know what what the board game industry is doing to counteract that because it seems like there's just not a lot of things that they can do, except for maybe having an online aspect to a game to get people to sit in the same room and actually do something together because Lord knows that's almost impossible at this point.
Yeah, I think part of the draw is it's an indie thing. You don't need to develop a board game. You need cardboard.
Yeah.
You don't need to, hire a developer, figure out how the Xbox works, figure out how the computer, figure out DOS. You can come up with the mechanics, write it on a card, and, you're good to go. And you can do. We've played board games based on, or not board games necessarily, but tabletop games that my friend printed off stuff from 4chan. You know, like Small Towns is one, which is like kind of a role-playing game where you play a bunch of like little kids who are investigating some mystery. Or Everyone is John, where everybody is playing one personality in a crazy guy's head, and you roll for control of him and build a story on that.
Oh, that's cool.
So I think part of it is just that board games do not have that overhead, and they are kind of an indie niche thing that if you find someone willing to play one board game, they're going to be willing to play others.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's kind of like Sentinels of the Multiverse was a gateway drug for me, and it's still my biggest addiction. And speaking of online versions, I actually have it on my phone. I'm in the middle of a game of Sentinels of the Multiverse.
Oh, see, now that's cool, because now I feel like that's an evolution for the idea of board games where you have an online aspect.
Yeah, and it has online multiplayer. You can play with other people, and honestly, some of the mechanics on there, if some villains have a lot of things to keep track of that the game is great for keeping track of for you. You know, you could just play your card, it tells you what to do. Because it does happen once in a while where it's like, okay, it's going to hit the hero target with the highest hit points. Okay, what do you got? You got 24, you got 23, you got 30. Okay, it's hitting you.
Right.
So this one kind of like, the game takes care of it. But I think a big portion of it is that it's not electronic, that it is a social game. And others are social. It creates a bond that, the 15 minutes on Call of Duty on the Xbox is not going to create, because there is downtime. While you're figuring out the rules or while it's not your turn, you can talk, you can chill, you can have a beer with somebody.
Right. Joke around about how this person always takes 45 minutes to take their turn. That's the game I was telling you about before. That's always my mother. Whenever we play with her, she's going to try to make like the most beautiful artistic interpretation of things. And I'm like, you understand the point of the game is to throw people off to almost not know what you're writing to make this funnier, right? And she's like, no, hold on 1 second. We have the scorecard, like the game pieces piled up in front of her. And it's like an assembly line. She finally finished, passing it off. Now she's got another one. So, I mean, there's always that one person.
Yeah, there's always one. I find it's usually someone who's new to the game, so they want to check their cards, see what it does, or there's some nuance to the rules they haven't got yet. But it kind of allows for that because you're planning your own turn. You can talk to people, and you can kind of relax. One group I'm in, they meet at Panera Bread.
Oh, nice.
So you're eating your sandwich while you're waiting for your turn. The group with Joe, we usually have a few drinks, which usually makes the games even more fun.
I can imagine.
And I have some games that are, Sentinels is one of the more complicated games where there are things to keep track of. Everybody's got hit points, what you're going to do with your cards. Certain villains have different win conditions. A lot of them are just beat them down to 0. Some of them are more like, okay, you have to save this person, you have to do this, or you have to. There's one like arena style villain where you don't win by beating her. You have to win the crowd by doing a lot of special stuff in the ring.
Oh, cool. All right.
So that's it's one of my favorites, but there is a lot to keep track of. Whereas another game that's one of my favorites, it's called Tsuro. It's called Tsuro, the Game of the Path, where it's kind of I tend to describe it as Zen bumper cars, where it's an 8 or a 6x6 6x6 tiles. Everybody starts with 3 tiles, and you draw more, where you're just moving a game piece across the board with tiles. And it's a very simple game, so that's the game we play either when we're waiting for somebody, we need something quick. Because I've played with 8 people on this, it took 20 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Or we're doing it to unwind at the end of a night, because it's very simple and kind of almost runs on autopilot for you.
So it's kind of just like, all right, we got the big beast game out of the way. Let's just kind of relax a little bit, play this game for 20 minutes and call it a night.
We need an hour Mike's got to sober up before he drives home, so let's play this for a little while.
That seems to, from the way you're describing it, that seems to be a thing that happens often.
There's we like to drink.
Hey, look, I'm not judging. Just let you know, I'm not judging.
We are all responsible. We all make sure that we're all good to drive. And, it's a way to relax in the middle of the week. So.
Look, I don't blame you. I mean, I feel like this is another scenario where we're getting into the idea that this country in general just isn't as connected as we used to be. I mean, with the invention of, all the new things like internet and cell phones, where we're, at the drop of a hat, we can talk to somebody who is in a state, actually now with the invention of the video aspects of phones, we can talk to somebody who's in a different state and see their faces. Oh, yeah. And now this is a great way to adapt, to get everybody to come into one area. They have to sit there and you're forced to converse. Yeah. And it's fun.
And it's great because it kind of, our game group on Tuesdays, what we play is kind of defined by who comes. Like, oh, she's coming, she has Carcassonne. We all like that game, so we're playing that. Oh, Mike's coming, he's got Sentinels, let's throw that out there. And it is nice in that, I think one thing it definitely has over video games is, if you and me both want to play Call of Duty, we both have to own Call of Duty.
Yeah.
We could break out Suro or Sentinels right now just with the one copy.
Right.
So it's kind of, you can have a gateway. It's a way to bring everyone together, like, cheaply. Well, not cheaply because all the expansions cost money, but
even still,
you didn't have to buy them if you want to try it.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, if this is something, and it's a good thing to also create a community, because now you have different people and everybody has something different. So now, like you said, depending upon who comes, oh, that's a game we're playing tonight. It's not just one person has to have everything.
Right, yeah, exactly. Although one person does tend to have some space to play. We've been jumping around for a little while. One person has a Golden Lab mix, so I obviously like going to that house a lot.
I do not disagree with you.
Another person has a very on edge, very sweet, but the dog has no chill. He barks at everything. He barks full force like we're being invaded by the Huns.
Listen, I've been in those positions.
But it's also fun. You get to meet, you get to know people over the games. It's not to say all the games we've ever played are great games. Some of them, like I said before, a lot of the cash-in games. In fact, on my list of bad/weird games are licensed games. We played once a game based on The Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh my God, I can just imagine how terrible this is.
And it had a lot of weird mechanics. Like, there were 2 particular weapons that could kill Freddy. If you didn't have them, you just had to run away. There were cards that came up where you had to tell a ghost story to the rest of the table.
That's
for
weird.
Something, or tell a happy story. It had a lot of weird... I like that in some games. Like, there's one game where it has a chainsaw card, and you do extra damage if you make chainsaw noises.
See, that's cool. I feel like that's like an aspect, especially if you guys are drinking, that's an aspect that makes the game a lot more fun.
There's actually a character in Sentinels of the Multiverse who's kind of a Deadpool character, where his cards have things like, okay, high five a player.
Oh, see, that's awesome.
Or if you throw your hands in the air and go woo, you can play an extra card right now.
I love it.
So he's a fun character, and I like that aspect sometimes, but I feel like it was kind of forced in the Nightmare on Elm Street game, where it's a weird cash-in. It's probably creative, but it's just not working. Another one we played a couple weeks ago, and we were all glad to be drunk playing this, the Pokemon Master Trainer game.
Oh, God. All right.
And it has a lot of interesting concepts, but it is really unbalanced in that there are certain cards that might force a trait. So you might luck into catching Mewtwo or one of the 3 legendaries, who are like the single... Aside from the evolutions, they're like the most powerful Pokemon in the game. And you can just be forced to trade them by another card.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah. And the weird way the dice work is, like, each time you land on the space with a Pokemon, you flip it over, and you have to roll 2 dice, or no, roll 1 die to try and catch it. But it's never like, okay, roll over 3, or roll over 5. It's roll 3 or 4, or roll 4 or 5. The legendaries, it's roll 6. I was rolling nothing but 6. I didn't catch a single friggin' one until we got to, like, the second area.
Oh my God, that's
so
crazy.
I was like, anytime someone wanted to battle me, I was screwed because I had the little dinky thing I started with.
Right.
And the final bosses, the way the game works is you can battle each other if you land on the same space, but the goal of the game is to get to the final battle where you randomly choose one of the Elite Four or Gary Oak, and yeah, because it's based more on the anime than the actual games. Use all those graphics and names.
Okay, that's cool.
And, we got there we're thinking we had a reasonably tough team. Then we flipped these things over, and, like, their base power is, like, double whatever we had. And they get, like, extra bonuses for how they roll. And we're all sitting there like, how the hell are we supposed to beat these guys?
Right. So, I mean, look, that brings up, one of the things that in games in general that I hate. I like a tough game. I like a challenge. I'm a big Legend of Zelda fan. I think we established that last week, or 2 weeks ago when I did the other podcast. But there was never a point in Zelda where I sat there and chucked my controller at the wall because it was so difficult. I just knew that maybe I had to use a different approach. But I always hated games where there were just some where it was literally impossible to beat them, and it's not even fun. It's like that scene in oh my god, I'm trying to think of the movie now, Superbad, where Jonah Hill's character is like trying on clothes, and Michael Cera is like just playing like a game. He's like, "This is so stupid. Why did they make it so impossible? Why is this even fun if you can't win?" And that scene always stuck to me because I was like, I've uttered those words, much angrier, but I've uttered those words.
I've given up on. I gave up on the Devil May Cry series for that reason. I was like, you know what? I'm just not having fun anymore. And I was almost to the point with this Pokemon Master Trainer game. And eventually, we were all just like rooting for each other to win, just like end the game.
Somebody
so we could play
beat 'em.
something else. Somebody get Gary Mother Effer Oak out of there. There was another game we played that wasn't necessarily a bad or unbalanced game, but it was kind of weird because it was very cutthroat in the mechanics. But it was a Bible game called Redemption, where
I love how the Bible game's cutthroat. Please,
I know it was like
please
very.
expound on this.
I think the game was basically the story of Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah.
The setup of the game was you were going through one of these before it got smote to try and find good people to get them out.
Okay.
But there was a lot of cards in there that would like screw the other players. Or otherwise stack the deck against them so that, the next time they go into a room, a dragon's going to be there, or the devil's going to be there, or you're going to lose your special cards.
It's a bit intense.
The Bible gets intense. Read that thing sometime.
I know it does, but man, you would think of the game based upon it wouldn't, hinge on those aspects.
This is a game that like two of my players were like, oh yeah, we played this in Sunday school. And I'm like, really? You played this in Sunday school? It's got a card for the Horror of Babylon, for God's sake.
What's a whore? Sister, what's a whore?
Yeah, that's the thing you got to explain in Sunday school.
You know what? I kind of wish I was there just to see let's
you
not
should,
play that card,
you should
little
come
Tim.
sometime. Although the guy who owns that game, I think he's in Switzerland right now, so he's unavailable.
Rightfully so. for buying an atrocity of a game like that.
Oh. But yeah, so overall, like I've had a lot of fun with the games. What about you? What are some of your favorites? You mentioned the telephone-esque game before.
That it's fun for me. I have a lot more fun with stuff that isn't as competitive because everybody hates me because I'm ridiculously competitive. There's a certain game. It's called Smartass, which is really fun. It's like a regular card turn-based game. There's 2 die. You have to roll a color, and you roll a color, and somebody's generated as the reader. The reader will read out a card, and it's based on it's either who am I, where am I, or what am I, and then there's a special red card that you can choose that gives you one specific question, and that's only for the player who rolls. But anybody can answer. So like you can start off and be like, I was born this year, I was born in this town. I'm famous for inventing this, and then be it's Albert Einstein. So whoever gets that answer first will get to roll the number die. And you can roll on the board, and there's I think there's a go back 3 spaces space, and mostly I think that might be it. And then there's the special card spot where if you land on that, you get a bonus for answering that. But it's fun because it's competitive, and you always try to shout out the answer before the other person. Yeah. And it gets to be really fun. But I'm ridiculously competitive, and I always seem that if I don't win, it's only because I keep landing on the go back 3 space, and I'm the first person to jump out and scream out answers. But if you scream an answer out and it's wrong, you can't answer. You're done for the turn.
Okay.
And then there's
punishes
also
you.
Yeah, and then actually another space on the card on the board is a mute space so that you can't answer that turn.
Oh.
So that game's a lot of fun. I think I tend to like it because I win a lot. But
yeah, we play a lot of games that are not necessarily competitive with each other or don't start competitive. There's actually two particular games they're among the same theme. One is called The Elder Sign. Okay. And the setup of that game is it's a cooperative game. Everybody is an investigator in the Cthulhu mythos type thing.
Oh, cool.
Cthulhu, and like the beginning of the game, you pick an old one, including Cthulhu, and you're exploring like this museum. And there's different cards like, this mirror that you see something move in it, but it's not there. Or this door that there's, the exhibit that was locked off. Why? And you kind of go to build up points to seal it off, and you're kind of going against an unseen cult that's trying to summon it. So that's one where it's it's kind of difficult. We don't lose often, but there's one or two that we've won on literally the last possible roll of the die before whatever we're up against devours everything.
Oh my God, that's cool.
But
you're saving the world.
Yeah, it's saving the world with film noir characters, basically.
That's awesome.
Like one guy, his name is Joe Diamond, so he's the detective with a pistol. There's a gangster there. There's a former cultist. There's a lot of variety of characters with different specialities and special effects. And that one is a purely cooperative. It's like Sentinels, where you're all at a common goal. Another one that we play a lot, another favorite, because it has just so much variety. It's called Betrayal at the House on the Hill.
Now that sounds interesting.
It is kind of a mouthful, though, to say. Yeah. I always get the on or the at. Betrayal in the house? No, at the house, on the hill. But that one, you're kind of playing as a group of people exploring this haunted house. And for the first part of the game, the house is kind of randomly generated, where the only thing you start with is the foyer. So you might turn off the door. So then you pick randomly a tile for the ground floor. And you might find... Okay, there's the parlor's there. Oh, the parlor, you take this card, and you get an omen, and you fill out the house. You find different rooms of various sinister merit. You might find a chapel in one room, and right next to it is a room covered in blood. Oh, with different effects on the different rooms. But the first section of the game, you're just exploring. You're building up items. You might get attacked randomly by certain cards, but you're basically just exploring. And then eventually you find out what the haunt is. Now, the haunt is determined by the room you're in when it's revealed and the omen you're in when it's revealed. The base game comes with 50 different scenarios.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's called Betrayal of the House on the Hill because once the haunt starts, in most of them, one of the players is now betrayed everybody else. Depending on the setup, it's either something like, oh, you were just bitten by a werewolf, so now you're a werewolf. Or you were against them from the start, and now they're figuring it out.
Gotcha.
So you actually have to sequester the betrayer, who has a separate rule book to read at that point, for what his win condition is, versus everybody else who's got to figure out what he's doing and try and stop him.
So now instead of it being just a cooperative game like the last time, where it's all versus and like the AI, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Now it's one versus all.
Yeah, and you can build up weapons and skills and stats in the first half of the game. So the first half of the game, you don't want like one person to come up with everything, because if they're the betrayer, everyone's screwed.
Right.
And I've been on both sides of it, and it gets intense, where you have cooperation, and it's some of the scenarios are stacked against the survivor, some of them are stacked against the betrayer. But it's always interesting, like, depending on where, because we've had some scenarios start with, like, 4 rooms have been unlocked. So there's, like, nowhere to run.
Oh, crap.
And others where, we've unlocked most of the house, so it's like a huge Scooby-Doo chase through every room. And the different scenarios, there's different, there's one scenario, actually, that doesn't have a betrayer, where the idea is the house is being grabbed by a giant flying bird, and you have to escape, but there's only 2 parachutes.
Oh,
so
crap.
You have to fight each other for the parachutes and make a run for it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Or others where there's one where I was the assistant to Dracula, so they had to find a spear and kill me, which they did. Relatively quickly. I don't roll well when there's dice involved, but it's always a random aspect, and I don't think we've played any scenario more than twice.
So that's awesome.
Yeah, and it came out with an expansion earlier in the year, which has like a few other, some kind of really weird or wild ones, which kind of incorporate like one where the betrayer is like this nanny ghost and turning you all into babies. And apparently,
that's crazy.
Once a game, they're allowed to just like stand up, point at a player, go to your room, and like they die.
Oh my God, that's so cool! That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's a lot of fun, and it is kind of it's kind of a mix where it starts as, like you said, cooperative, where you're all exploring, and then it's like the guy next to you is the enemy.
It's like, that's it. I'll turn on Mike.
Yeah, that tends to happen a lot. I always seem to get the revealed guy.
No, apparently you're just the other guy that's easily turn onable.
I guess so. That explains a few relationships I've had.
Oh no, that could be a whole nother podcast.
Oh.
I mean, that brings me to an interesting point though, because I mean, I think that a lot of times we get caught up in this everyday grind, and we get caught up in the idea that coming home and relaxing has to just do with throwing on Netflix and just
and chilling.
Yeah, and even if it's by yourself, and the idea of now. I like the idea of camaraderie, the idea that you have a group of people that we can, you can go to and be like, hey, look, every Wednesday or Thursday, we're going to go meet up at Joe's house and we're going to have ourselves a game night. And I think this is something that we can all take, a little bit of a cue from, because we've become so detached. And now maybe we should all kind of start maybe having a game night every week. I know that, it's something that me and my wife were thinking about starting to do once we got settled into our apartment. Hey, maybe we'll just have a couple people over, we'll make dinner, and we'll have a game night, and we'll hang out, and we'll play board games for a little while. Maybe we'll have a few drinks, have a lot of laughs, and make a night of it that we can look forward to every week.
Yeah, it's something. It's been the highlight of my week for a long time. The only thing that matched it was when I was going to classes with this gentleman. That became another highlight.
Well, partly, I don't blame you, because I'm fantastic.
He really is. That's also partly because I was missing the regular game night for the classes and all the work I had to do.
That sucks. Sorry, we kind of screwed you there.
But it is a good time, and everything you said is true. Some of my closest friends are people I've met or not met, but
got to know better
through the game night. It's a sense of continuity and a sense of camaraderie, and it's better than sitting in front of the TV for the evening. You have a couple drinks, you play a game, you have some laughs. You imagine the weird, bizarre setups that the game implies. Like, again, Sentinels. There's one time I'm basically hucking, like, one character can destroy environment cards, and the environment we're in has it's a city, so the falling monorail.
Oh, okay.
So the character is like basically destroying the monorail and hitting the villain with it over and over.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So these are the kinds of things, the bizarre images that come in with the game that adds another wrinkle to it. And I there's a lot of humor in it. There's a lot of we always have fun. Sometimes people do get more competitive than necessary.
That would be me.
But we always have a good time. We always end as friends.
That's fair. That's a good thing.
Except almost when we were playing Monopoly. But that goes without saying.
Look, I'm telling you right now, that's my sister hates playing board games with me because of how competitive I am. So I understand people who have that. Who
should try one of the cooperative games.
Maybe that's something we should start looking into. We've actually taken away playing a lot of the games that are competitive and started playing games that are, like Telestrations and like Scribblish, because they're not as competitive. It's more of a fun-based thing. Probably because I'm so competitive. I may be one of the major reasons as to why I hate losing in anything. So
yeah,
that's just me.
And getting eliminated, there's nothing worse than like getting out of the game early because of some misstep, and you got to sit there watching everybody else play.
Oh my God, I hated that. That used to be a game when I was a kid called Tornado Rex. I don't know if you ever played that. It was you had to climb up a hill, and there was a Tornado Rex was a little guy, and you press the button, and he came down, and if you were in a spot and he hit you, you were done. You were eliminated. You had to go all the way back to the beginning. And I always wound up that I would be like further than everybody else, getting the best rolls. And right when I was getting close, bang! I get a Tornado Rex and get knocked off the entire board. Whereas like my sister would roll like crap, and the little guy would just go right by her. She'd be standing there just in the middle, and you could place your little guy wherever you wanted on that thing, and just somehow it just never hit her.
That's what we were talking about earlier. The American games, very very luck based.
Yep, you're not kidding.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, I really appreciate you coming on and doing this. This was
thanks for having
much
me.
Fun.
Yeah.
I end my shows every week with giving everybody the comic of the week. Of course, I gave everybody 2 weeks last week to read. So, have you read anything recently that?
I have not read comics in a long time, actually. No. So.
All right, I was going to say if you had one, we can go with yours. I guess if that's the case, I'm going to go with one that I actually just got and haven't even gotten a chance to read yet. It's a Mark Millar comic. His name is spelled Millar. It should be pronounced that way, but it's pronounced Miller. And it's called Nemesis. The idea is that it's a Marvel comic, but it's almost like Batman in reverse. He's all dressed in white, he's rich and all that, but in some way there's a completely big turn in this character. And Mark Miller's great at doing one-shot comics where it's almost like you're watching a movie. So this is this isn't a big giant backstory to something else that's going to lead. It's okay, this is this is the character, this is what's going to happen, and then it's done.
This is the story.
This is the entire story. So one of my really good friends who I'm hoping to get on here, my friend Tom, had put me on to trying to pick this up because we've been we trade comics back and forth, if not physically, just titles that we should pick up to read, and that's actually what I'm going to be getting into this week. So I'm actually recommending this blindly, going on somebody else's word. But
that's daring. That's very daring.
If I didn't trust him, if he didn't leave me, well, first of all, Mark Millar has written some of the coolest comics. He's written. He had something to do with Civil War. He wrote a lot of the some Fantastic Four.
Well, Wanted was one of his, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. So he's one of those. I'm personally a Brian Michael Bendis guy. I love everything that Bendis does, but my friend Tom is a Mark Millar guy, and he's turned me on to him recently. So this is me giving a little bit of a break of me going after Bendis a little bit, or going to DC and trying to realizing that all my comics seem to have a Marvel logo on the side of them. As much as I'm a Green Lantern fan, who's my favorite superhero, I kind of seem like they always tend to buy like, oh man, I've never read Maximum Carnage. I think that's going to be on my list, and I have a running list on my phone right now on Amazon of just all the comics I want to read, and sometimes there's not enough time in a day, but that's going to be my comic of the week for this week, and I'm going to get to read that myself, probably maybe at the same time as whoever else decides to read it. So that's something that you guys can all hopefully sink your teeth into.
Sounds good.
But for that, this has been the Geek Guy Podcast. Mike, thank you so much for being on here.
Thank you for having me. I hope you have me on again.
I will absolutely have you on again. It's not about if, it's about when. So thank you guys also for listening. Once again, if you want to follow on Twitter, we're at the Slam Sessions, a part of the Slam Sessions podcast network. And give us a follow up what we're doing, and make sure you give us a listen. And we'll see you guys next time.